speaker along with Mr. Anna Bandyopadhyay from the World Bank on the EVAC-TG, the Eastern Waterways project.
Perfect. Thank you. And we have about 3 to 4 minutes each.
No, you have 5-6 minutes. Don't worry. Yeah.
Please cover.
Madam, can we inform every speaker about the timings they are supposed to speak for?
Sorry, sir. I didn't get your question.
Just can we inform all our speakers how much time is allotted to each one of them?
Yes, sir. We can do that.
Madam,
Honorable Minister is here.
Madam Amita is for 9 minutes.
Can we just start? Honorable Minister is here.
Yeah, just showing time in 30 seconds.
Yes. So, good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to Day 2 of Maritime India Summit 2021. Thank you for taking out time and joining the plenary session on water transport, promoting cargo and passenger movement, and of course, seaplane and tourism. We are most delighted to have amongst us Shri Hardeep Singh Puri ji. Welcome, sir. To formally welcome the Honorable Minister and to deliver the opening remarks, I invite Mr. Rajiv Jalota, Chairman, Mumbai Port Trust. Mr. Jalota, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Nirja. I and my co-convener Praveer Pandey, Vice Chairman of Inland Waterways Authority of India, extend a warm welcome to Honorable Minister for Civil Aviation, Housing and Urban Affairs, and Minister of State in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in the Government of India, Dr. Hardeep Singh Puri, and all our esteemed speakers and participating delegates to this plenary on water transport for cargo and passenger movement, which also introduces seaplanes as a potential tourism transport mode in India. Indian water transport is a fuel-efficient, environment-friendly and cost-effective mode of transport, having potential to supplement the overburdened rail and congested roads. India has nearly 15,323 kilometers of navigable inland waterways with substantial unexplored potential. A considerable length of potentially navigable inland waterways has been designated as national waterways. Besides these national waterways, Inland Waterways Authority of India is developing and maintaining the Indian side of Sundarbans waterways under the Indo-Bangladesh Protocol. Development of eastern water connectivity, transport grid is a major focus of the central government. India has seen tremendous growth in inland waterways development in the last 6 years for cargo and passenger movement, including river cruise tourism and leisure. The Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways is taking dedicated policy efforts to promote ro-ro and high-speed ferries as an efficient and cost-effective mode of passenger and cargo movement at potential urban and hinterland nodes of the country. We need measures to integrate ferry system with other modes of transport for providing last-mile connectivity to passengers. Innovative and sustainable technologies are desired for keeping the waterways navigable, low draft but high carrying capacity, fuel-efficient vessels, and cost-effective terminal development. Inland Waterways Authority of India, the Sagarmala Development Corporation, various major ports, and the state maritime boards have all come together to ensure investors have ample risk-free business opportunities in India. Maritime India Summit's purpose is to create the synergy among private and public players to ensure that India catapults into the League of Nations having developed a waterway system. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Hardeep Singh Puri, Honorable Minister in the Government of India. He is a former diplomat, a 1974 batch of Indian Foreign Service, who served as a permanent representative of India to the United Nations and was President of the United Nations Security Council from August 2011 to November 2012. During his tenure on diplomatic missions, Dr. Puri represented India in countries such as United Kingdom, Japan, Sri Lanka, and Brazil. His passion to explore new frontiers of development will bring out the potential of seaplane operations in India. without much ado, I invite the Honorable Minister to formally inaugurate the session and offer his introductory remarks, showcasing the potential of cargo and passenger water transport in India. Minister, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rajiv ji. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, let me start by acknowledging the presence and welcoming all of you, Shri Mohammad Mesbah Chaudhry ji, Secretary Shipping of the Government of Bangladesh, Dr. Amita Prasad, Chairman of the Inland Waterways Authority of India, my friend and collaborator for many years, our dynamic High Commissioner in Dhaka, Shri Vikram Durai Swami ji, Shri Rajiv Jalota, Chairman Mumbai Port Trust, Shri Praveer Pandey, Vice Chairman of the Inland Waterways Authority of India, captains of industry from India and overseas, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me immense pleasure to be with you in what can only be described as a unique event, which has been organized by the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways. I want to thank in particular my close friend and colleague, Shri Mansukh Bhai Mandavia ji, for inviting me to address this gathering on a subject which is receiving very high priority in the Government of India, and I will explain why, in particularly for the Ministry of Civil Aviation. The Honorable Prime Minister of India inaugurated the second Maritime India Summit yesterday, in which he highlighted the vibrancy and resilience of the blue economy for India. And he emphasized, and I quote, India is very serious about growing in the maritime sector and emerging as a leading blue economy of the world. Our strong presence in the oceans over the centuries has been recorded in history. We had established significant trade links with countries from East Africa to Southeast Asia, just to mention one geographical region. Presently, estimates are that around 95% of India's trade by volume and 70% of trade by value is carried through sea routes. We have strong linkages with the neighboring countries. More than 80% of India-ASEAN trade is carried through sea routes. Cargo ships in India have increased from 557 in 2001 to more than 1,300 in 2016. According to the draft policy framework for India's blue economy, it is said to have contributed about 4% of our GDP. Some think tanks have estimated that the size of the blue trade in India to be around US dollars $137 billion or thereabouts. Let me move quickly to a subject which occupies a considerable amount of time, attention, and is a very high priority for my ministry, that is civil aviation. India's first ever national civil aviation policy, approved in 2016, and it provided regional connectivity through the Udan scheme, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik, on 21st October 2016, and the intention was to make flying affordable to citizens in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. This scheme also brought into focus the seaplane operations, which has become a reality in India. I was part of the historic event when the Honorable Prime Minister inaugurated the first ever seaplane service from the Statue of Unity in Kevadia to the Sabarmati riverfront, Ahmedabad, on 31st October 2020. Once the Seaplane service was launched, as was only to be expected, my ministry received a number of requests from state governments and civil society for launch of similar services and operations at other places. The potential that exists is enormous. We have set up an institutional mechanism with the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, with the Ministry of Tourism and state governments. In the first instance and in the first phase, we have awarded 14 Udan routes, collecting 12 water aerodromes. 2 routes have already been operationalized, connecting the Statue of Unity, Kevadia with the Sabarmati riverfront. Other awarded water aerodromes routes are in Gujarat, Assam, Meghalaya, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Andaman and the Nicobar Islands and Lakshadweep. These have already been awarded, but the amount of interest which is being shown, including for operation of Seaplane from the river front in Delhi to other adjoining states, both in terms of point-to-point connections and in terms of linking through intermediary points, is enormous. We are therefore identifying more water bodies that could be developed as aerodromes in the near future. Seaplane operations in India are still in a nascent stage, and business models need to be developed to make these operations viable economically and sustainable. A regulatory framework for seaplane operations has been put in place. Capacities for creation of infrastructure of seaplane operations like hangars, floating docks, flight tanks, buoys, etc., and capacity building of operation vis-a-vis the availability of trained pilots, AMEs, etc., has to develop holistically. With a coastline of more than 7,500 kilometers, a large number of dams and river ports, 200 small ports and 13 major ports, there is a huge potential for seaplane operations in India, and this is obvious and evident not only to those of us who have something to do with policy formulation, but the economic stakeholders who wish to exploit this potential for increase in tourism and related activities. In fact, if we were to look into the future, then considering the increasing urbanization, double-digit air traffic growth, low penetration of around 7%, and consequently clogging of airports, issues relating to noise pollution, etc., large-scale water-based or sea-based operation, in fact, are around the corner. And I can say this with a degree of confidence. You know, India is going through a civil aviation paradigmatic shift. We have operationalized 311 of the about 760 Udan routes which have been awarded. We are planning to take the operationalized routes from the current figure of 311 to about 1,000 or so. We have about 100 airports which are currently under construction. We have many greenfield airports, but a new trend which I am witnessing is that when I meet my distinguished colleagues in Parliament through our established mechanism, now the demand is coming that every district should have its own airstrip or a helipad. And many of these would be not land-based, but they would be along water fronts. We have something like 453, I think, airstrips in India, and we have about 700 districts. So it should not take time for us to, in fact, look at how to fill the gap between the existing airstrips and the other one. The point I'm making, and I wish to submit for consideration, that in the Indian civil aviation growth story, where we have had a cumulated, if you average it out, a growth rate of about 14%, even during difficult times. Our domestic civil aviation is almost back to pre-COVID levels. Our international civil aviation will be back to pre-COVID levels when entry restrictions in other countries ease. We are almost ready. If we have the pandemic, by the way, I got my jab this morning. And I can tell you this is another success story. But the seaplane and the operation of sea ferries, tourism through seaplane, and a host of areas are crying out for attention. And I'm 100% sure that this is another next major task which we will be addressing. Coming now very briefly to cargo operation, there is enormous potential for inland waterways movement. The cost of movement of freight is Indian rupees 1.36 per ton per kilometer for railways. It is 2.5 per ton per kilometer for highways, and just rupees 1.06 per ton per kilometer for inland waterways. Again, the point I wish to make is, in overall terms, the India civil aviation cargo story is beginning to unfold. The India cargo movement along waterways is beginning to unfold, and a lot of water body related civil aviation access is waiting to take off. India has nearly 15,000 kilometers of navigable inland waterways with substantial unexplored potential. Less than 4,000 kilometers out of these 15,000 kilometers has been designated as 5 national waterways. The government has notified 106 additional waterways as national waterways in 2016. As a result of various initiatives, the total cargo volume transported through inland waterways in India reached 73.6 million tons per annum in 2019-20 and has grown at a CAGR of 19% over the last 5 years. Now, this by any yardstick shows that the growth and the direction is substantial. Discussing India's investment profile in domestic waterways, the Honorable Prime Minister referred to unprecedented nature of investment in domestic waterways due to its cost effectiveness and the environment friendliness of freight transport. He also referred to operationalization of 23 waterways by 2030. Early signs of success in inland waterways transport, evidenced by an increasing utilization of the waterways for cargo movement in the northeast, is expected to accelerate with improved facilities in terms of infrastructure and vessels. Inland Waterways Authority of India is developing and maintaining the Indian side of the Sundarbans waterways under the Indo-Bangladesh Protocol. The provisions of the Indo-Bangladesh and Indo-Myanmar Protocol permitting transshipment of goods through Bangladesh and Myanmar waters gives the necessary right of way, enabling quicker shipments and deeper market penetration in India's northeast. The government has also undertaken other initiatives that include the Jal Vikas Marg for NW1, Arth Ganga, and Arth Brahmaputra for holistic and sustainable development, leveraging NW1 and NW2 for freight and passenger movement. To enhance passenger movement, a number of projects like water taxi, Ro-Ro, ferry, and Ropax are in various stages of planning and execution in Gujarat, Kochi, Kolkata, and Mumbai. I would at the end like to reiterate that the Ministry of Civil Aviation, in partnership with the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, Ministry of Tourism and state governments and our industry partners, is committed to develop water infrastructure in a big way, and we are already on course to develop more water aerodromes. This will not only help in movement of local people, but also in the growth of tourism. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Mr. Sir, for your valuable insights on the development of seaplane sector in India, its growth potential, and you have stated that your ministry, in conjunction with tourism and Ministry for Shipping, Ports and Waterways, is developing 14 water aerodromes to connect 14 routes in the phase 1, and a large number of potential routes will come up in near future. Now I request my co-convener Praveer Pandey to highlight the potential of Indian waterways with his presentation in a short film. Praveer, please.
Thank you very much, sir. And very grateful to the Honorable Minister for giving his very valuable insights in the beginning of this session. While the story of inland waterways in US, in China, European Union, Vietnam, and even in Bangladesh grew exponentially over the last 30, 40 years. In India, it remained a lost socio-economic opportunity. Since 2014-15, renewed efforts have been made to bring back the economics of transport on the waterways, on the blue pathways, and also connect it to the existing modes of transport. The aim is to reduce the logistic costs as well as the environmental costs, as the Honorable Minister pointed out. In fact, the effort is to correct the imbalances and connect people. A third modal choice is being created by the rejuvenation of transport on waterways. In fact, a fourth modal choice is also in the offing, and that is the seaplanes operation. So a whole basket of transport modal choice would be available in the country within a few years. I will just set the context of this session in 4 to 5 slides. As you can see from the first slide, that this was the oldest mode of transport in India since the Mauryan, Magadhan, and Gupta empires, and since the 4th century, and during the British Raj systems. Next, please. But since mid-19th century, the inland navigation in India declined with growth of road and rail, which became the dominant modes of transport, while the importance of navigation through inland waterways for passenger and cargo both declined rapidly. Next slide, please. If we see the modal share compared globally, India stands at 2% of its total transport share through inland waterways. When you compare it to China, that is 14%, in Vietnam, 18%, Netherlands is 44%, and the European Union and US, it's roughly about 10 to 12%. So much has to be done to rejuvenate this mode of transport, which was the backbone of transportation in India about 70 to 80 years back. Next slide. So with a renewed policy matrix, the government started a concept of integrated transport planning. And in this, the first major river project which was taken up was the Ganges River Transportation Project. And it was aligned with the railway's Eastern Dedicated Freight Corridor, the freight flow by road, and then make it also a modal choice for the transportation of goods and passengers in the eastern sector. But the story did not end here. With rapid investment, rapid technological interventions, with the help of the World Bank and other similar situated organizations, a very rapid progress has been made in the development of waterways in the eastern sector of India. And as the Honorable Minister pointed out, and Chairman Mumbai Port also pointed out, that a 4,000 kilometer of waterway is being envisaged from Varanasi to Sadia. That is National Waterway 1 Ganga passing through UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, and West Bengal, connecting through the Indo-Bangladesh protocol route of about 1,600 kilometers, and then in the National Waterway 2, that is River Brahmaputra, going up to Sadia, another 900 kilometers. So a whole network of waterways is being envisaged, and the work is going on rapidly and intensively. Next slide, please. A step further is the sub-regional connectivity, which the Honorable Prime Minister in his address pointed out yesterday while inaugurating the Maritime India Summit. This is the concept of Eastern Waterways Connectivity Transport Grid Program, in which the natural connectivity existing between India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar is being planned to be leveraged to provide access to Bhutan as well as Nepal through the technological interventions, the infrastructure which is being developed, the navigational network system which is being laid down to create around 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers of waterways connecting these 5 nations and giving access to the open seas through the waterways to the landlocked countries of Nepal and Bhutan. Next slide, please. The new initiatives, as you can see, are the RoRo and RoPax services, which was mentioned by the Chairman Mumbai Port, the convener of this session, that eases the transportation convenience between two banks of the river, between two locations, reduces the distance between two locations, reduces the fuel costs, and reduces the environmental pollution which is prevalent in India. You can also see the picture of the seaplane which flew from the Statue of Unity, Kevadia, to the Sabarmati riverfront. In Mumbai, the Alibag Mumbai RoPax services has commenced and it has become very popular. In Kochi also, the RoPax services have started. In River Brahmaputra, at 3 or 4 locations, RoRo and RoPax services have commenced. In the Ganges, the trucks, loaded trucks, are being transported by barges from one bank of the river to the another, and thereby reducing the logistics inconvenience in the country all over. Next slide, please. So you can see that it's happening. The rivers are getting rejuvenated. The transport economics is coming back onto the waterways. And if you will see the slide just about Ganges, if you can see the river Ganga, from 4.89 million tons, the cargo projected now is 12 million tons. Overall, from 55 million tons, the cargo on inland waterways is now 77 million tons, with the aim of reaching 120 million tons in the next 3 to 4 years. Thank you very much. And now a brief video will be shown on the context of this session. Thank you very much.
Many of the rivers in India that used to transport cargo and people and related economic activities no longer do so. India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, witnessing massive growth in multiple sectors, which has necessitated development, including creating an efficient transportation system that is key to sustainable development. Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi realized that one of the critical paths to economic growth starts with infrastructure build-up, and in the last 7 years, his vision on changing urban transport system has worked wonders. He envisioned the necessity of urban water transport that is ideal for India with high population density, congested urban transport and time-consuming expensive choices. His vision in establishing waterways transport in several cities, which are cost-effective, less cumbersome, environment-friendly, and aimed at easing the lives of the people is being implemented in all earnest by the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways and Inland Waterways Authority of India. Better utilization of India's national waterways for mobility-centered economic development is a critical necessity today. Better design for civic use, transportation of goods and commuters, systems for intermodal transfer, tourism, etc. are some of the areas where urban water transport can define economic growth and urban planning for many cities. Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi launched the first ever seaplane service in India on Sabarmati River in Ahmedabad. The seaplane service connects Sabarmati riverfront in Ahmedabad and the Statue of Unity in Kevadia. This is a new beginning for the nation that has been waiting expectantly for a modern, hassle-free and quick urban transport system. Kochi has been badly hit by massive traffic snarls and toxic vehicular pollution, mainly because of huge movement of heavy vehicles, specifically in the 25-kilometer stretch connecting International Container Transshipment Terminal ICTT, Vallarpadam and southern Kerala cities like Alappuzha and Kollam, creating havoc on the health of the city populace. Now, RoRo vessels MV Adi Shankara and MV CV Raman are deployed to reduce the burden on this road to connect the Kochi port with waterways between Willingdon Island and Bolugatti RoRo jetties. which would not only promote eco-friendly mode of transportation and ensure ease of life for the people of the city, but will also reduce pollution, save time and cost of travel considerably. Prime Minister Narendra Modi dedicated the 2 ro-ro vessels to the nation on 14th February 2021. The financial capital of India, Mumbai, is badly hit by traffic congestion and snarls, and the newly launched water transport system ro-ro services between Ferry Wharf in Mumbai and Mandwa in Alibag will help reduce the travel time to Alibag. The 113-kilometer road travel has transformed into a mere 19-kilometer sea route that takes barely an hour. 12 such inland waterways routes have already been identified to connect Vasai, Kalyan, Thane and Navi Mumbai. That would serve as a low-cost urban transport service leading to economic development of the region. The Ghoga-Dahej Ro-Pax service was launched by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi in Gujarat's Gulf of Khambat on 9th of November 2020. It bridges the Gulf of Khambat by providing a sea route to a large number of passengers travelling to and fro from Bhavnagar, located on the western side of the Gulf, and South Gujarat on the east. The sea route is shorter and time efficient as compared to the road. Construction of 5 pairs of ro-ro terminals at strategic location on Ganges has been planned, which will reduce the distance, time and cost of travelling and transporting goods and people in between the banks of the river. There is a plan to revive inland waterway passenger ship service in Goa, connecting rural areas to cities in the coastal state. In order to make the urban water transport easier, faster and trendy, various technological interventions are being undertaken. The new look urban water transport system has already started scripting history in Indian infrastructure development that would change the facet of transportation in congested urban settlement. Urban transport has the potential of creating benefits across the economic spectrum in the realm of logistics, landside traffic decongestion, employment, and huge environmental benefits, leading to a new dawn in the urban transport horizon.
Thanks, Praveer, for setting the context for this session. I would like to inform all the participant delegates that the distinguished panel of speakers for this plenary will provide thought-provoking insights on the extensive opportunities that the water transport in India has now on offer. Unfortunately, we will miss the experience hearing from Mr. Mohammad Mesbauddin Chaudhary Sahab, the Shipping Secretary of Bangladesh, and Mr. Ajay Singh, Chairman and Managing Director, SpiceJet, who expressed their inability to join us at the last minute due to their urgent official exigencies much beyond their control. But in fact, I'm really grateful to Minister Sir for having given the delegates the detailed presentation on the seaplane opportunities on offer in India. I would request our speakers to kindly stick to the timelines given in our schedule. The bios of the speakers are shared in the virtual database of the plenary. Question and answer session will happen after all speakers have spoken. Delegates can post their questions in the chat box, which will be accessible to us, and then we will be replying to their questions. Now, to start with our first speaker, I welcome Dr. Amita Prasad, Chairperson, Inlet Waterways Authority of India. Madam is a 1985 batch officer of Indian Administrative Service, who has served in various important capacities in central government and government of Karnataka. She will share with us the experience and success stories of Inlet Waterways Authority of India. Madam Prasad, please.
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister, Housing, Urban Development and Civil Aviation, Shri Hardeep Puri ji, my colleagues from Ministry, Convener and Co-Convener, His Excellency from Bangladesh, Shri Durai Swami, friends and distinguished participants. I think that tone has been already set. Everybody has seen the beautiful film presented by the Co-Convener, and Honorable Minister also talked about the opportunities in the sector of urban water transport. When we talk about transport, we are only thinking of either rail or road, and the water transport comes as a very poor cousin, maybe somewhere. But the key factor, which Honorable Prime Minister also talked about in the Maritime Vision and inauguration yesterday, it is realizing the potential of waterways, connectivity, and logistics. May I have the next slide, please? When we are talking about the heavy reliance on single transport mode, if you can have a look at the slides, the road is very, very high, and then rail, and then the waterways come. But the logistic cost in India is about 14% of the total GDP, while the other developed economies is about 6 to 8%. And when we look at it, why it happens, it only happens because we are not utilizing the potential of waterways which already exist. In the previous slides, the co-convener talked about the various urban transport projects which is happening in many parts of the country now. And realizing that the connectivity and logistics can happen very well, there is a substantial attention has been drawn toward this sector. And in the Maritime Vision 2030, we have also put this as a very important factor. May I have the next slide, please? So when we are talking about logistic efficiency, everybody has these figures that India ranks 44th in the world. And then each segment of logistics, there is a lot of challenges. The rail sector, the road, they have also the challenges. Somewhere, if you read it, we feel that rail is very, like they have taken the dominance, but they are scared of the road sector, which is coming as a dominant, as about 65% of the total logistics sector in our country. Rail wants to go from 31 to 41. We want to grow from 2 to 5%. So there will be always some adjustment required. We have the climate change. We also have the efficiency. So when we are looking at it and how IWI is functioning, there are a lot of issues have already been discussed also. But I like to say one thing, that what is required is a system integration. And also globally, if you look at, like we looked at the figures and the water share, Australia, Norway, USA, Hong Kong, they have taken measures to integrate. Everywhere there has been a thought that how do we make the transport sector, logistics sector more efficient and also environment friendly and sustainable. The next slide, please. So when we are talking about multimodal transport linkage, then in this chain, waterways play a very important role. And in waterways sector, now the seaplane has also been added, not only as a recreation, but also as a mode of ferrying the ferry, as a ferry also it can work. So when we look at that, what type of things hamper the growth? The growth hampering is because of a number of issues which are there. In the waterways sector, one is the investment part itself. There is a very few, I mean, if you look at it, we have not invested too much in this waterways sector. Now for the last 6 years, the Jalmar Vikas project has come, which has enhanced on the Ganga, and we are also linking up, and government is providing lot of this thing on funding is being given to us. So efficient conduct of logistics become very important, and in that becomes important what are the things we have to do, connecting and providing. Next, please. The national perspective is important, and there has been a national policy of logistics which has already said that despite the growth, the potential remains unexploited. So there is a need to bring the issue under one foreseeable umbrella, and Ministry of Commerce, in which Logistic Department is there, they have talked about 4 key factors here: integration, support, coordination, and evaluation. So if you look at the slide, there is a national master plan which gives a picture about the multimodal infrastructure connectivity to various economic zones. And this National Industrial Corridor Development Corporation, NICDC, will be looking at it. And the vast agriculture and how they will be connected with the waterways, with the highways, that has also been projected. Now I will talk about the initiatives by the IWI. Next slide, please. You can just skip this and come to the next. Yeah, thank you. So in this, when we look at it, I am talking about National Waterways 2, which is Brahmaputra system, which is about 900 kilometers. And This route was very vibrant till 1965. That is before the war and birth of Bangladesh. And this route was carrying jute, tea, mail, and also the passenger. But because of geopolitical reasons, this got slightly disconnected. But now for last, since IWI is working and since 1988, and with Mahabahu Brahmaputra project, which Honorable Prime Minister recently launched, we expect that this transport linkage will go in a long way to connecting, and there will be opportunity for movement of the traffic. This again, when we are talking about waterways, waterways is not only efficient but also it is helpful in decongestion. There may be talk about the number of hours on road and number of hours on waterways, but one thing I like to say that one vessel can carry 300 metric ton, while one truck cannot carry so much, and that will be 300 metric ton vessel will carry about 10 trucks of load. So this comparison sometimes are not warranted also, but integrated development of multimodal park and Pandu, Dubri, these are the terminals. These are the real pictures which you can see. Next, please. The National Waterways has been very highly, beautifully explained by Praveer just before I spoke. So I will not like to talk much, but the three pictures you are seeing, they are from the Varanasi, Haldia, and Sahabganj. We expect that the model which are followed even in US and Belgium, that government makes the investment and private sector maintenance and management happens. This is the model we have taken for this, and we expect that this will connect. There is a lot of renewed interest in this. Recently, we carried some of the, the cargo which we never thought existed, some carbon cargo or some of the husk cargo, we did it, and I'm sure that this will pick up. So this is a very new development which has happened, and I'm sure we are expecting that this will pick up much more in the coming days. Next, please. Now, what are the risks? These are the pictures of Varanasi multimodal, and which you can see the, we are also showing some of the logistic parks which are nearby. These are the three, like we can say our showman projects where we are also traffic and revenue risk. We are sharing with everybody. Opportunity does exist. What are the opportunities? We have signed an MOU with now MOL, which is one of the largest company in gas and petroleum products. And they are very keen to go through waterways, and they are looking at all the potential which exists. So one problem which we must highlight here, there are problems of taxation, there are problems of GST, and there are problems of vessels also in this sector. But with the new Inland Vessels Act, which is very soon going to be introduced in the Parliament, we expect that there will be problems of registration and others will be removed, and people will be able to utilize this sector as much as possible. Next slide, please. Now, as I told you, and as Praveer also showed it, I will not like to dwell too much upon it. These are newly procured Atmanirbhar vessels procured from Cochin shipyard, and collective financial and operational capability of both states, center, and private sector has been utilized in these projects to make it efficient. So it is not only the state has provided the capital and the RoRo vessels, and other things can happen. Next, please. Next slide, I'm not dwelling too much upon it. Praveer has shown it, so I'll skip this and I'll come to the last one. This is a freight village, a concept which comes that if the industry also comes next to the waterways, it will be more efficient. So the two places as a under the National Infrastructure Project, we are trying to connect the last mile connectivity. The roads are being connected to the jetties, which was not there earlier. Jetties were existing earlier also, but there was no integration. But with the new initiatives taken by governments in various ministries, now jetties are being connected through the roads, national waterway, national highways also. So this is one of the very important thing, that if the industry also comes next to the jetties, there will be more development. I'm showing you here two projects. One is Banarasi and the second one is Sahabganj. Sahabganj lands are available now. We are making the master plan, and mostly we'll be doing it with the Ministry of Surface Transport, this potential. So this is to create potential for use. And there are issues of overlapping jurisdiction, land acquisition. These are some epidemics, but we have, like we have had better battles we have won. So I'm sure this also can be won. The idea for this, the entire integration, the entire, we are not competing. I mean, I'm making it very clear the waterways is not competing with any other modal transport which is available. The waterways is the supplementary mode of and where connectivity is possible. Inland waterways has shown the way that integration is possible through PPP, through government and private sector partnership, and both for transport, for ferry passengers, and for recreation and tourism, this sector can be a very viable sector. Thank you very much for inviting me for this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for a very insightful presentation, and you really brought out very well the distinction between the limits where the government can go, that is for the infrastructure development, but thereafter the operations and maintenance part, as you have very rightly pointed out, is to be done through PPP concessions, and for which IWI has already initiated the steps. The second thing, ma'am, which you brought out very well is the problem of last mile connectivity, because most of the warehouses and storage capacities were planned along the road and rail, as you pointed out, but with the freight villages and ICLPs, now the last mile connectivity is also being addressed. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your very insightful presentation. We hope people would have really benefited from this. Now I have the pleasure of inviting Captain Anil Kishore Singh. He is the CEO Adani Ports and Special Economic Zone. Captain Singh, Anil Kishore Singh is a master mariner with a career spanning over 38 years in the field of marine operations, survey and port operations. He has worked with various organizations, including the Shipping Corporation of India, Southern Petrochemicals Industries Corporation, Reliance, Kandla Port Trust, and also the Mercantile Marine Department. He has a proven track record of developing infrastructure projects, including the Adani Hazira Port Private Limited. Presently, he is heading the inland waterways and dredging vertical of the Adani Group. Captain Anil Kishore Singh.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a correction. I am not the CEO of APSCZ, but of the two verticals that I am heading. Just a clarification. Honorable Minister, senior officials, fellow panelists and participants, I represent the inland waterways and the dredging division of Adani Group, and therefore I am uniquely qualified to talk about the Sustainable Dredging Act initiatives and river training strategies that we have been adopting. And our operation extends to about 300 kilometers of inland waterways in National Waterway 1, and that is where my experiences will be shared from. Next, please. This is I don't want to repeat the same message that Dr. Prasad just now gave, but I just want to give the context of dredging and therefore developing the national waterways in a particular perspective of dredging. Short-haul cargoes have been vibrant in the national waterway and contribute a very large percentage of being handled there. The long haul, which is on the right that you see, which represents only 4 billion tons of cargo of the total basket of inland waterways, is where the focus is, so that the inland waterways can actually supplement road and rail. The short haul cargo is a unique operation and it has no competition with the other ones. Next. This is the context of the eastern grid that we as a vessel operator first identified, and then we got attached to the Inland Waterways effort on developing the National Waterway 1. And this is the reason that we have been talking about National Waterway 1. Here is a pictorial representation of 1 as well as 2 and the Bangladesh protocol route. I will tackle the National Waterway 1 experiences first. Next. These are the 3 critical elements to developing long-haul cargo in the riverways, which was a vibrant sector, as Madam pointed out, before 1965, but fell into disuse afterwards. In any case, as Mr. Pandey had pointed out earlier, for the last 200 years, the waterways have been losing cargo to road and rail. In the 3 critical elements of river water navigation systems, terminal equipment, and assured depth is where the dredging comes in, and that is where I'll be taking off now. Next, please. The last remark is useful there for everybody who's here. That is, the connectivity between India and Bangladesh can be improved and distances reduced dramatically if downstream of Farakka there is a possible connectivity to the Eastern Waterway, and therefore the not NW1 per se can connect you to NW2 in a reasonably quick and clever manner to be on par with road and rail transport as and when this connectivity happens. And in Waterways, we're looking at it, and I hope it happens soon. Next, please. Just press one more time. One more. Yeah. Dredging is basically the dislodging, picking up, and disposal of material from the riverbed. The rivers have a natural flow. They deepen at their own at some places. Some places there is an accretion of material which has to be dislodged. And after dislodging, the material has to be picked up and either allowed to flow with the stream or stacked up somewhere else for land reclamation. Whereas, so that is why we say that the purpose of dredging has been identified over there. In the rivers, in the National Waterway 1, we have basically been trying to use the flow of the water to transfer the material from one place to another and get create a waterway. Types of dredging is capital maintenance. In National Waterways, we are doing maintenance only because the river was deep once upon a time. We are trying to restore the depth in a useful manner. Next. This is the potential for movement, a further detailed note on the potential. And that is why we are very, very hopeful that Haldia Kolkata section, which is north-south and has a distance parity with rail and road, will be the conduit for supplementing these logistic activities all the way up to the eastern part of Nepal and even Siliguri, Darjeeling region. And Sahibganj terminal is well located for servicing this need. This will be a truly beautiful multimodal mode of operation. Next, please. This is the area where we have dredged and got our experience from. This is our third year of operation, and we handle about 300 kilometers of the National Waterway 1 over there, with a bit of gap between Kehalgaon and Sahibganj. And the ask has been getting tougher and tougher in the sense that we started with a lower depth requirement and a lesser width requirement. And it has now progressed on to, we started with less than 2 meters depth and 35 meters width of channel. Then it has now been, the ask has been upgraded to 3 meters and 45 meters. But I think we have had reasonable success, which I'll try and share afterwards. Next, please. One of the important aspects of the river dredging that we have faced, and we congratulate the Indian Waterways Authority, is that they have moved away from quantity-based contracts to assured depth contracts. As a vessel operator, I have found that assured depth is the most important thing I look for in planning my voyages, planning my logistics. The inland water vessels are small, 2,000 tons at the most. Madam talked about 3,300 tons for the container vessel, but otherwise the bulkers can take 2,000 tons. Now, if you have a cargo which is to be delivered with a round trip of 5 days, even 10,000 tons per day, for example, coal for a power plant, this 10,000 tons will support 25 ships when day-night navigation is available. 25 ships straight away means 250 jobs. So these are the kind of numbers we are talking about. We have just scratched the surface so far. We need to go a long way. But assured depth contract has been good for the vessel operator as well as the contractor, who now has total freedom to find out the most navigable route, develop it and maintain it, and with a fast reaction time. And whereas the authority has been relief from the burden of quantity waste calculation, you develop a channel in one place, but actually the river will move somewhere else and all the effort gets wasted. Next, please. In the course of our operation, we realized that small equipment not necessarily is the best, although we cannot go for very big equipment, because big equipment is very difficult to maneuver upstream and place in the right location where dredging may be required. Next. These are the usual equipments we use, but the last one on the right, the cutter suction dredger of a small capacity, is what we have found works best in the river. Next. We had to do a particular modification in the sense that the correct size and productivity of the dredger had a mismatch with the size of the hull. So we extended the hull to ensure that when the dredger swings around once, the entire width of the navigable can be covered. Next, please. We have also used locally used techniques like bamboo walls and the bamboo mats, which are very popular in Bangladesh, and we have also incorporated in our strategy, which has reduced our mechanical interventions to a large extent. Just basically diverts the flow of water in a way that the kinetic energy is used for deepening natural. Next. We have, of course, been mindful of the aquatic life underneath the surface, and we have been using dolphin pinchers and all. These are very real issues which you have to take care of. Otherwise, you alienate not only the authorities, but the local population as well. Next. Finally, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. When we started dredging, the depths were hovering between 1.5 to 2 meters. In the second year of operation, we met our ask of 2.5 meters most of the time, except for a brief period, which is the dry season in terms of the river in November. And for this current year, we have asked is tougher at 3 meters, and yet we are meeting the targets. Next. Various constraints in the river, same that Dr. Prasad talked about. Here also we have faced jurisdictional problems, interference with locals. Some of the areas are remote and not very conducive to dredging work per se, but we have overcome them with the help of the authorities and with the localizing. Next. We had talked about national waterways, sir. I know I have exceeded my time, but I just need to complete this slide one more. Next, please. There is a lot of potential to the movement of Northeast India because there is a parity between the distance and the time taken. These are not time-sensitive cargoes that we have actually carried to the Northeast. It is doable, it is possible, provided a similar amount of attention to NW2 is paid as we are paying to NW1. That is maintaining of a channel and monitoring. Next, please. This is where the eastern grid is. The ports in Assam, just after the river at the confluence of India and Bangladesh, is capable of serving the central Bhutan area from Phuentsholing, as well as Jelufu, where the Bhutanese government is making a big economic park, and to our, of course, northeast states, Dhubri and other places. These are good locations to work in, and I hope the focus is shifting. It has been talked about, and I hope it shifts quickly. Next, please. The challenges we envisage are that the river training exercises, flood control measures should not interfere with the waterway challenges. There, for example, terminal at Dhubri has now gone away, the stream has moved away from the terminal, and therefore keeping the jetty approachable has become a challenge. These have to be studied in detail before more facilities are created. Next, please. These are usual scientific background knowledge about river training. Next, please. One of the things that we discovered was that if you have a fast speed boat crisscrossing the river regularly, you can identify the shift in the flow of the river and therefore minimize your interference with the natural flow and yet maintain a channel. Next, please. Thank you. So that brings me to an end of the presentation. I hope I have been able to add to your knowledge just a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Singh. As always, very informative presentation. I hope the participants would have really benefited from the very deep insights that you have given about the constraints of navigation. It's not easy. It's very challenging. And the second part is the concept of short depth dredging contract, that is the performance-based navigation contracts that really brings about balance in the risks between the government, the shared risks between the government and the contractors. And that was a very beautiful point that you have brought out, that how risk sharing can be done in a very prudent manner, and that would lead to correct imbalances in the contractual arrangements. So, and thank you very much for the very deep insights, Captain Singh. And now I would like to introduce Mr. Raj Singh, Chairman of the Exotic Heritage Group. Mr. Raj Singh has pioneered river cruising on the Ganges in eastern India. He is a renowned authority on Indian wildlife and a travel industry pioneer. He came to the banks of the river seeking adventure and ended up starting river cruise on the Ganges. He has played a key role in opening up Bhutan to the markets abroad, tourism markets. And little did he imagine it would take 5 years to develop the concept of river cruise on Ganges before inaugurating the first cruise in 2009. The Heritage River Journeys team is bringing others to sail on the Ganges in peace and splendor, offering fresh encounters with the ancient landscapes. His fleet includes the Ganges Voyager and Ganges Voyager 2, as well as a new vessel to be launched this year. We wish him all the best for his new launch. And I now request Mr. Raj Singh to give his speech. You have 6 minutes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Pandey, Vice Chairman, Honorable Minister, dignitaries, and other colleagues. First of all, as an Indian, I'm very proud to say that we reintroduced river cruising in India after over 100 years on the Ganga. And today, Ganga is on the river map for world tourism. So when people look at river, when they look at Nile, they also look at the Ganga or the Mekong. So we are now in the same league as far as river cruising is concerned. Not only is it for international tourists, but this year, with the present situations, we did start marketing for domestic tourists, and we have had a tremendous response. In fact, only 2 days back, we inaugurated our first cruise to Sundarbans from a beautiful new jetty in the Princep Ghat of the Calcutta Port Trust and IWI, and the trip was a success. So basically, river cruising is here to stay, and we are moving, having pioneered it in the first place. Next, please. Antara river cruises. Of course, we go to untouched areas where you can't actually sometimes go by surface or by transportation or by road or even by trains. Again, the experiences are unmatched. And what you see is something which is unforgettable, because the whole question, the whole experience of river cruising or travel by river is very different from sea cruising. It's very serene, it's very soul searching. And wherever you go, it's something from which we learn about ourselves. Next, please. Whatever river cruises we operate, one of the things is that we do a lot of attention to detail. So all our guests come and they have the best of the experiences, whether it's navigating, whether it's sightseeing, whether it's experiences. Next, please. Our fleet, all our ships are made in India. They're made not only in India, but everything is Indian. And also the other thing is they're all suite ships. That means all the ships, wherever they're public spaces or others are, they're all facing the river. And so you are able, even from your bedroom, to see the Ganga River or any of the other rivers. Next, please. One of our first ship, Ganges Voyager. As you can see, this is a 28-suite ship, which has got dining hall, spa, lounge, fitness center, and all the other facilities. Next, please. Ganges Voyager 2 is the other sister ship. Now, this ship has been rated among the 6 best river cruise experiences in the world by US rating organizations. So we are there, as far as these concerned, in the world level when it comes to river cruising. Next, please. Of course, the interiors, again, are conceived and designed by Indians, and everything here is, whether it's the furniture, as you can see, these are the different bedrooms, and all the furniture. The textiles have been also specially sourced from our own artisans in the villages. And you can see even the paintings and all are by local artists. So you can see the bedrooms, the decks, the spa area, as well as the exercise area. Next, please. More interiors and exteriors of the ship. As you can see, the ships are of the highest standard when it comes to safety, security, and maintenance. Next one, please. Gangnam Villas. Now, this is one of our pioneering ships. This ship will have the capacity to operate all the way from Allahabad, Varanasi, Calcutta, Dhaka, all the way up to Majoli Island and beyond. And the thing is, it will cover a distance of over 3,500 kilometers, which is the largest cruising distance in the world. And we hope to operate it hopefully from October onwards. Again, this is something unique which we have. And as I said, this will join National Waterway number 1, National Waterway number 2, as well as the Indo-Bangla Protocol route. We also were the first to operate along with the Ministry of Shipping, Inland Waterways Authority of India, the Calcutta to Dhaka first ever cruise in 2019. So there are boundaries, there are things which are happening with Inland Waterways, Ministry of Shipping, where we are moving ahead, and we have done things in tourism which were not possible years back. Next, please. Again, as you can see, the interiors of the ship, which is the 18th-suite ship, is inspired by Art Deco. All our artists, people who came to India, made India their home, whether they were Indians, foreigners, and were inspired. So we are inspired by all these things. Fabrics for this particular ship are being made in Varanasi by artists by hand. And so everything would be what we are, our own ethos. Next, please. And of course, then comes Gangnam Villas. Being from Rajasthan, being from the bridge area, from the childhood, I've been inspired, and going to Mathura, Vrindavan. And so if you can see this boat, this is traditional boat, totally wooden. And of course, made by local craftsmen. It has taken us almost 6 years to complete this boat. And when it's done, it would be a unique boat of its kind as it is, because it will have all the traditional artistry, as well as also whatever the modern things are needed. Let's move. Next, please. Of course, this is a single bedroom boat traditionally, which we hope to base in Varanasi. And of course, it has got the STP plants, water filtration plants, everything which is needed for a modern ship. So this has been specially designed where from, and here it'll have its own dining hall. Next, please. This is how it will look: the bedroom, the dining hall, and of course, the sun deck. Next, please. Ganges Voyager, our ship, of course, operates from all the way from Varanasi to Calcutta, going to the different places which are there on the river, tourist sites, villages, and other things. So this is the one which we are doing regularly. Next, please. Of course, this is the route we follow all the way from Varanasi to Calcutta, stopping and visiting the different sites and places. Next, please. Of course, when we go on the Ganga, what do we see? There are lots of things. There are some things which you cannot even imagine, besides the personal experience of soul searching. When you are on the Ganga, I've been there. My first cruises, I was there for 3 months traveling all the way from Calcutta to Varanasi and return. And in the middle of the Ganga, it makes you realize, it makes you enlightened in your own way. It's something which cannot be described by me. You have to be there in order to experience it. So I'll show you some of the things which we saw along the Ganga. Next, please. We visit villages where you see artists, where you can participate and you know and interact with villages. We use e-rickshaws for sightseeing. That means we are not polluting anything and getting the local communities involved with what it is. They are part of it. So basically, we may be having only 100 people on a ship or 200 people on a cruise ship. But then the thing is, the amount of exposure which the locals get, the artists get, is phenomenal. It can be thousands directly and indirectly. Next one.
So you have exceeded your time limit, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, sorry, Pandi. Okay. So can you go, please move forward? These are some of the other experiences. Can you move more experience as we go along? Our ships and all. Okay. Vegetables, things we get locally, other experiences. And of course, next, we go to Mayapur and other Bodh Gaya and other places. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, the thing is that our upcoming cruise project in October 2021, we hope to start cruising in Brahmani River and Veterni in Orissa. We have plans and we have already finalized, and we'll be going to tourist areas which are phenomenal there and which are not visited. So October 2021 is Orissa. The other projects which are there, next please, which we are going to be operating in 2022 and 3. Next, please. Is Goa, is again there. We have already designs and we are moving ahead even at this time. Next, please. Kerala, again, is another new destination. Please keep on moving. Chambal in Rajasthan is another place where we have, which is close to our heart and where we are going to do some expedition cruising there. Next, please. Of course, one of the great sites which we have is the Ayodhya. How can we connect Ayodhya, which is there through the Saryu, Ghagra rivers to Varanasi? So you can do a wonderful, wonderful cruise connecting Ayodhya with Varanasi through a river cruise. And that's possible and doable. And that would be a wonderful, another new project which we have in mind. Next, please. We want to keep our rivers clean, and that's why unpolluted. That's the reason why we have our own water filtration plants. That means nothing goes into the river. Everything is, there's no plastic we use. We use e-rickshaws for our sightseeing. We've got oil separators. We even use hospital silencers, so there's no noise pollution. So we are in tourism, but we want to keep our rivers pristine and clean. So all the measures we are taking. Next, please.
Mr. Singh, I'm sorry, I will have to intervene, and I think you have really over-exceeded.
All
sorry
right.
about that.
This is the last one.
Yeah.
Next one, it's finished. Hello, next one, please. Thank you so much. We also do in corporate social responsibility. And if for more information, you can visit our website. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for a very beautiful and picturesque presentation. And I'm sure that we have all been transported to the river Ganges, and at the first opportunity, all of us would like to jump onto the cruise vessels and sail the Ganges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now, I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Pratap Talwar. He is the head of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, TDG Group, and he's an architect, planner, and urban designer whose projects span a broad range of development contexts in the US, Europe, and Asia. He is a graduate of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, fellow of the Institute of Urban Design, and has served as faculty for the Mayor's Institute for City Design, sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts, and as commentator on urban design and development. As team leader of the TDG MIT consortium, he is engaged in planning and design of river transit and multi-purpose urban infrastructure on various waterways in India. Dr. Talwar, sir, you have 8 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Minister, dignitaries, friends. My job here is to give you a survey of urban water transport from successful examples of new initiatives in India as compared to those that we have experienced elsewhere in the world, and to look at how these might be flag posts for future development of waterways, specifically with urbanization in mind. Next, please. The drivers of transit-oriented growth in India are obvious. There's a large and growing population in cities. It's over 33% now. There is high utilization of intermodal transit in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, and these cities are planning regional rail and other transport to their hinterlands, thereby enlarging the pool of users of transit. And lastly, a large underserved rural and peri-urban area around these cities that is being affected by urban services and economy. Next. When we compare the use of urban transport, river transport, water transport in established cities around the world that we worked in, we notice a stage of integration, series of stages of integration of water transport and their interplay with their geographic context and with driving urban development to a more transit-oriented phase. Briefly speaking, they're either reinforcing existing settlement patterns, improving modal integration, or inducing new investments both in land as well as in infrastructure for future growth. Next. When we compare these simple integration characteristics to 6 successful initiatives that are underway today in India, we find that we find different patterns, but generally speaking, these settlements tend to generate potentials even when there is no transport. I will be discussing these 6 cities in order to look at them in a little more detail to see what one can learn for how these transit systems might be accelerated in India. Next. The first example is that of intercity transport. It has been raised already. There's a Ro-Pax movement between Surat and Bhavnagar from 2 ports on the west coast and 1 port, Gogha, on the east coast of the Gulf of Khambat. Next. As these have been taken up by private operators, there is a balancing that is occurring today between the kinds of riders that are being attracted naturally to these to this facility, and the pricing and tariff structure of the operators in play. And these challenges obviously directly affect not only the rate of return for the operator, but also the future markets that might be touched by such infrastructure. Next. Opportunities for the future, both for the operator as well as for the government that has encouraged the operator to provide these services, is to maximize and incentivize end-to-end Ro-Pax services, which not only take advantage of the draw potential of those that have already seen cost advantage in moving from road-based transport to at least partial transport by water, but also others that may not have that transport. So finding additional modes that could be connected to Ro-Pax in both business terms as well as from a draw perspective is it would be maximizing the value of the investments that have already been made. Lastly, of course, the same model can be expanded to other bays and other water transport along routes, especially when they can reutilize or share landing facilities that are already in place at ports. Next. I'm now going to talk to you about two other cases, Goa and Mumbai, where 2 diametrically opposite planned approaches to transport have been successful. In the case of Goa, it's a government-led, government-operated system of that serves about 250,000 people, commuters, and operates about 40 boats. This is seen as a public service in Goa, and Goa is looking to the river navigation department is looking to expand this transport up rivers with the aspect of river transport being available free for commuters. Next. In Mumbai, a more opportunistic model for water transport has been employed, and legacy ferry routes which have used public landings for private operations, with private operations, have been successful in tourist areas, and more recently, as was previously mentioned, for RoPax movements south of Bombay. In order to take full advantage of location advantage of the ports, redevelopment of along the southern waterfront of Mumbai, it would be necessary for those areas that are being invested in real estate to be accessible to large numbers of people who are not only living within Mumbai, but also in Navi Mumbai, directly across the water. It seems to make sense that a more planned, more organized orchestration of investments in transport induce development and vice versa, specifically for passenger traffic, and that these that additional models be employed in the case of the water sheet in Mumbai. Next. Kochi is an interesting example, not only because it's a great port and growing port, but also because it is uniquely situated as a city of about 6.5 million people, which has what they call water metro. In fact, the metro organization in Kochi also plans and operates a paired ferry system. The fundamental investment of Kochi Metro was based upon an 8-year payback with a goal for ridership on the metro system. Next. In order to fulfill that mandate, that financial mandate of drawing riders to it, in 2017, a water metro service, which acts like a feeder of residential and other commuter flow to the metro system, has been created, and a $110 million project, or roughly 820 crore project, is now leveraging the 780 million project that was the metro rail, and extending the use of both modes at the same time. Next. In Kolkata, where we have worked on a city on the NW1 project, a plan has been created to organize ferry transport as a gateway between different modes of transit. Calcutta is the largest transit, has the largest transit ridership of any city in the country, but its connections in central Calcutta between modes is poor. We feel that by doing this, the amount of riders on the total transit system could be doubled on ferries, that is, to approximately 50 lakh riders on average per month. Next. And in Varanasi, also an NW1 project, ferry transport, which has already, which the vice chairman spoke of, has already commenced with new boats being commissioned for tourist traffic, and the fare structure for this area envisages the cross-subsidization of local commuter traffic at low cost on the backs of large tourist activity, which is the largest economic driver in Varanasi. One of the things that Varanasi also contributes is an idea of employing a kit of parts for landings and bank resilience that could be employed in climate changing bank circumstances along most urban riverfronts in India. Next. To sum up, these 6 cities have, the experience of these 6 cities could not have been actuated had not the Inland Waterways Authority progressed with the waterway program that they have, and a goal and would not have, and I think the future expansion of urban water transport in other cities would require somebody like the IWAI to provide best practice and measurable goals for cities on waters where water transit can play an important urban development goal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Talwar. And this was perhaps the core presentation for this session, that is the water transport. And you have really laid out the strategies and the roadmap for the development of urban water transport in the city, especially the 6 locations which you have suggested. So thank you very much. We wish we could have heard more from you. And we almost felt like it was a kind of a session in MIT. So that was beautiful. So very quickly, can I now introduce Mr. Harry De Leer, who is one of our very esteemed speakers. He has been awarded with a knighthood in the Order of Orange Nassau of the Netherlands. He is a specialist in multimodal transport with a focus on inland waterways, ports, and hinterland connectivity. And he has carried out multimodal transport projects for international agencies, institutions, and governments all over the world, especially in China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Egypt, Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina. Presently, Harry is partner in STC Nestor, a part of the STC group in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Welcome, Harry. Looking forward to your presentation.
Dear Harry,
you have 9 minutes.
Dear Harry, just can I interrupt you for a minute? Our Honorable Minister, sir, actually is leaving now because he had a earlier fixed meeting from 2 o'clock. So we are highly grateful to our Minister, sir, for having spared his time for this valuable session and sat through the whole session and giving us a glimpse of what Seaplane has on offer and how his ministry is working with the Ministry of Food, Shipping and Waterways to develop it as a model for this part of the country. Sir, there is a small question that has come. If you would like to answer, you may take it, sir. From Mr. Jayant Malviya, who has asked that whether the ministry is planning to permit single engine seaplanes like Kodiak 100.
First of all, thank you very much. I had been told that I would be required from 12:30 to 2, and I was here sharp at 12:30. My program doesn't permit any flexibility, so I have to leave. Insofar as what we are planning to is not, these are issues which when we receive the proposal, we will have the security, safety, all these issues addressed. So if whoever, Mr. Malviya or anyone else has any such proposal, send it to us. We'll have it examined. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, Harry, please continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sophia, for the very kind introduction. I will try to be brief, so let's move to the next slide and tell a little bit about inlet waterway transportation around the world. I'm happy to share my experiences, what has been developing in inlet waterway transport, how India is doing, and the challenges that we see for the future in India. Inlet waterway transportation has developed into a modern mode of transportation, integrated in supply chains, serving many different cargo types on short distance in cities. The sector has become very innovative with clean vessels, use of ICT, high safety levels, and waterways becoming green economic corridors. However, when we look at countries around the world, inlet waterways are still a niche market. Industries are fragmented,
and they are used especially for slow-moving bulk cargoes. Vessels are normally old, high energy use, and in high emission levels. The question is whether we can turn around that picture of inlet waterway transportation, and the answer is yes. But this is not easy. It is a long-term affair. It requires high political commitment, strong guidance, institutions with a clear role and mandate, and a consistent supporting policy that is required. And I think that India has done that in an enormous good manner. Next slide, please. When we look at inlet waterway approaches, we can distinguish three different stages. A conventional approach, but unfortunately still used in most countries, is build and they shall come. That is under the assumption that when you construct infrastructure, that companies will come automatically to use the waterways. That is not the case, unfortunately, because most shippers and carriers are not familiar with the waterways, so they will not easily shift their cargoes. In order to create more awareness, waterway authorities move to a second approach, promote and they will come, but also that one did not bring the expected results. The approach that we see now, and I'm happy to say that this one is also followed in India, is a very active, or you could say proactive market development approach. This has led to many results. India has adopted this strategy with pilot sailings, demonstration projects, standard vessel designs, and support mechanisms. Next slide, please. New insights in inlet waterway transport development require that projects in this field take into account a number of principles. First, we have to work on future-proof infrastructure on the basis of working with nature. We have to look at inlet waterway transport not as an isolated system, but integrated into multimodal supply chains. And we have to balance in a better manner the different values of the waterways. A proactive approach to market development is needed, and we need an active stakeholder involvement, both the public and the private stakeholders in all stages of the work. So we have to create a fit for future inlet waterway transportation system, making use of proven innovations. Next slide, please. The first area of innovations that I would like to explain is infrastructure. Of course, infrastructure remains the key enabler for water transport. It is important to address capacity constraints or missing links with respect to other uses of the waterway. Fit for future waterways are to be realized in an integrated manner, covering all the functions and highlighting the added value for production industries. Reliable information on shipping conditions and climate resilient infrastructure are important factors. This not only requires research on climate change impact, but also smart maintenance and operating the waterways based on big data. Examples like collective depth measurements by barge owners come to mind to support waterway managers to better target maintenance of shallow sections, allowing higher payloads. Flying and aquatic drones can be deployed as a tool in preventive maintenance, better capacity management, and emergency response. Next slide, please. The second innovation is digitalization. This can facilitate efficient, clean, and safe waterway transportation. In river information services, safety is still a key objective, but new digital tools on corridor level can make inlet waterway transport more predictable, reliable, and efficient. Platforms have been set up to address the challenges to develop and share knowledge on smart and intelligent infrastructure, shipping, and communication. Pilots are done on innovations like vessel platooning, remotely controlled, and even fully autonomous vessels. Next one, please. And then we come to environment. I think there a third innovation is taking place. At this moment, it is not yet clear which alternative fuel will give the best solution for the future. With the target of zero emission, several options are being researched and tested as transition or zero emission fuel. We have to look for win-win solutions for the industry, transport, and the energy sector. Inland ports can act as energy hubs for the production, storage, and supply of renewables and equipment, which also opens up potential cargo volumes for inland water transport. energy generating waterway infrastructure in ports or near waterways could provide renewable power for waterway operations, foresee in clean shore power, and provide excess power to the power grid. Next one. The strategy to decarbonize transportation and realize cleaner air related to inlet waterways can be realized in 3 ways. First, make transport itself cleaner. The second, to adopt new logistic concepts, which are supported by digital tools. And finally, smart and more efficient inland waterway transport solutions that will provide the opportunity to attract cargo flows which are currently transported by road, or we can generate new cargo flows. Next one, please. Now we go to India, where we have looked in detail at the NW1 project, which you could say was the first major inland waterways project in India in many years. Experiences from this project may determine the development in other waterways. The question is in how far the project has implemented the modern principles and which challenges remain in India. We have looked at a number of different interventions. First, look at capacity augmentation. This was handled in a very flexible manner. The project started with the idea to provide 3-meter least available draft for the entire waterway. But a few changed, following market and engineering studies, technical innovations in shallow draft vessels. The working with nature principle was adopted by minimizing physical interventions and accept natural conditions of the waterways as much as possible, and by providing additional and accompanying infrastructures such as multimodal terminals, developing a new ship lock and RAS. Next slide. For market development, the project unit followed a very proactive approach. They organized promotional events, roadshows, pilot schemes, and they focused at logistics and multimodality. Environment and safety was addressed via dredging with environmental safeguards, introduction of performance-based contracting and monitoring. It included an emergency response plan, RAS and traffic management, waste management, and several studies on the effects of nature. Next one. This proactive approach included innovative vessel designs that were given to the market and studies of the freight flow concept. And as we could see in the presentation of the chairperson of Inland Waterway Transport Authority, this is going to be implemented. All this is necessary to lower the barriers to step into inland waterway transport. We could say that the Waterway Authority has gone way beyond its traditional scope of waterway management. It has adopted an integrated vision combining all these elements, and I think that needs to be appreciated. That is completely different from what other waterway authorities are doing. Also, the project unit that was set up in the Waterway Authority, they did a remarkable job. From my international perspective, this project is quite unique. It is very modern. However, I also have to remark that we can identify a number of remaining challenges for water transport in India. That is going to be shown on the next slide. And the major one is the fleet. It is, there are simply not enough adequate vessels, especially for cargo transportation. Companies face difficulties in new buildings and renewal of the fleet. Financing is one of these issues. Support programs for vessel construction are needed, combined with smart funding solutions, especially for greening the fleet. Capacity building is an issue at all levels. Think about an education and research and development cluster for inland waterway transportation, including international cooperation in the field of greening and also smart shipping. Active promotion is a continuous activity, possibly via a dedicated promotion agency, which should also link to market observation and information for operators and users of inland waterways, which could also manage support programs and dissemination of knowledge and experiences. Functions of inland ports should be strengthened via additional logistics or industrial activities along the waterways and via the freight village concept. This opens the way for cargo generation along the waterway, a better flow balancing, and decrease of last mile transport. And I come to the final slide. With more and more countries investing in inland waterway transportation, we need new mechanisms to share knowledge across the boundaries and continents. we can maximize the value of the rivers as a shared resource and work on fit for future inlet waterway transportation to realize a sustainable, safe and efficient system in all water basins, making use of best practices and innovation skills. And I would like to give the floor back to the chairman by thanking all of you. And when you have questions, please do contact us. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry, for your insights on innovative technologies and its supportive role in providing safe waterways. The concept of fit for future is really apt, and you have raised really good questions about the lowering the barriers for entry into water transport by looking at it holistically, like Indian Waterways has looked at while developing the NW1 and how it needs to be replicated with full policy support for future waterways development. Actually, we have overshot our time, but our session is quite interesting for everybody. Now, for the next session, we have two esteemed speakers. The session is on Eastern Waterways Connectivity Transport Grid, a major logistics effort for development of the region. Mr. Vikram K. Doraiswamy, High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, and Mr. Arnav Bandyopadhyay, the lead transport with the Transport Global Practice in the South Asia region of the World Bank. I welcome both of them. Vikram joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1992 and has represented India in various countries such as China, South Africa, Uzbekistan, Republic of Korea, and Americas. In Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi, Vikram also worked as Head of Division for Bangladesh and Myanmar. I now request Vikram to deliver his talk.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the organizers of the event, the Ministry of Shipping, our partners Vicky, and of course, Chairperson of the IWAI, Dr. Amita Prasad, yourself, Rajiv ji, and of course, my old friend, Praveer Pandey. Thank you also to the previous presenters. I thought they were very interesting, including the presentation from Mr. Dr. Dilea on the inland waterways assessment that he provided us. Let me make a couple of very quick points about this. First of all, since the focus of this presentation and this conversation with Mr. Bandyopadhyay is about the regional aspect, there is, first of all, a historic point to the regional connectivity. As we know, the eastern region, if you look at the undivided Bengal and beyond, Assam, etc., served as the fundamental transportation node for the late Mughal period and beyond into the British colonial period also. In fact, even today, Bangladesh's inland water territories alone account for around 10,000 kilometers of waterway capacity. There is, of course, in this as the underlying basis on which the Protocol on Inland Waterways Trade and Transit was established in 1972 and then renewed again in 2015 and kept an auto renewal since then. The current context is, of course, that COVID, the recognition of regional supply chains has sort of increased as a result of COVID. And beyond that, we've also recognized that environmental challenges and the complexities of logistics in our region, as many speakers have indicated, require or necessitate a need for greater coordination of multiple modalities of logistics. I think this is one of the drivers that has actually promoted recognition of the importance of inland waterways, which is one of the reasons why we signed the addendum to the protocol last year to add two routes, the Sonamura-Daudkundi route for eastern Bangladesh connecting up with Tripura, and the Rajshahi-Godagir-Dhulyan route with extension to Aricha, which is on the western part of Bangladesh, which was also mentioned by others. This requires, second part requires a certain amount of additional attention to increase its navigability and identify the opportunities there. Looking ahead, there are opportunities to look at the extension of the PRWTT to Varanasi, connecting Nepal, India, and Bhutan, including through Varanasi and on Sahibganj on one side and through Jogigopa on the other. And then finding out how best we can leverage maritime connectivity in the totality of the Brahmaputra system for the eastern connectivity of India and Bangladesh. There are, of course, key challenges that need to be addressed. Dredging was one, and I think our colleague from the Adanis made a lot of very useful points. We need to consider how best we can look at both capital and maintenance dredging as a means of ensuring that the waterways remain navigable. We also need to consider how much is an acceptable distance and whether there is an opportunity for us to invest in flat bottom barges which require lower draft. I'd also like to underline the importance that we attach to the totality of regional connectivity, including through the Eastern Waterways Connectivity Transport Grid, the EWA-CTG, which clearly needs an acronym or a better name to make it more user-friendly. But it's an excellent idea, and I welcome the interest of the World Bank in being able to support this. We know the benefits of water connectivity. I won't belabor the point, but it's important. There is a historic infrastructure renovation portion that comes through use of regional waterway connectivity. Second, we are actually, when we use waterways, we are actually going with geography rather than against it. So there is a logic to it, which is obvious. Third, affordability. As far as we understand it, waterways can move up to 4 times as much cargo per liter of fuel. In other words, therefore making it cost effective. Bangladesh has done very well in particular in this. Political benefits, essentially we use rivers as ropes that unite the sub-region rather than divide it. But otherwise rivers can often be a matter of some amount of friction. It reduces the carbon footprint. It unlocks value for private investment. It offers opportunities for regional integration and, of course, the opportunities for cultural heritage and tourism. Some of the slides that Mr. Singh showed us were certainly very tempting, as Praveer pointed out. What is the way forward? I'd like to suggest that there are two broad sets of things that we could look at: general opportunities and larger specific opportunities. The general opportunities, of course, is the importance of trying to create standard operating procedures between regulatory institutions in the sub-region, so as to simplify the processes of movement of goods. Otherwise, there are far too many complications that restrict the use of, say, less than container loads, that restrict transshipment. So we need to actually find a way in which we can collectively incentivize the use of river water transport. I would suggest in particular an opportunity to perhaps press for, shall we say, duty-free treatment of goods that utilize green river water shipping. For instance, if you were to be able to use electric barges, could that be a driver of securing as an incentive duty-free transportation? Could we use a regional information dissemination model so that information about the circulation and the navigability of waters can be increased through simple information flow systems? Can we use interconnections between business chambers to enhance capacity to drive business towards inland waterways? And can we create far more multimodal transportation systems so that, for instance, seaplanes could be used to connect up from river ports on the deltaic basin to islands in the Bay of Bengal? Or, for instance, ro-ro transportation, as is being used in parts of India, to also simplify the movement of trucks so that you don't have to have transshipment in the sub-regional context. In the specific points, obviously one key issue is improvement of pilotage and deployment of navigation aids. Safety of shipping. We've had incidents of accidents in many of the inland waterways in both India and Bangladesh. So there's a need to obviously invest more heavily in shipping. We need to consider there's an opportunity to enhance regional training of inland sailors. There is traditional knowledge. Can we see if we can transplant some of that into modern sailing practices on our rivers? Can we look at joint initiatives to build flat-bottom barges and electric barges? I see the Cochin shipyards has been doing a lot of good work in putting together electric vessels. I see that they've actually been building for international markets. Maybe this is an opportunity to build for the region, including in India and in Bangladesh, so that we can actually lead the world in moving towards environmentally friendly shipping, and thereby move towards a far lesser carbon impact upon our rivers. Let me conclude with that. I realize we've gone well beyond our scheduled time, but I look forward to hearing Mr. Bandyopadhyay and, of course, receiving any questions if there are. Thank you again to the organizers for putting this important event together.
Thanks. Full presentation. In fact, your take at for regional to and more efficient waterways transportation is very apt. The other issue raised about green initiatives and incentivizing joint cooperation can be done for development of green vessels is also a welcome suggestion. Now would request Upadhyay to deliver his talk. Mr. Arnab has an active interest in expertise in diverse areas of transportation in highways and rural roads, maritime and water transport, multimodal transport and logistics, and regional trade and transport facilitation. Several publications related. Now I invite Arnab to deliver his talk, please.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Mr. Jalota. My thanks to the organizers, Dr. Prasad, also Mr. Pandey, as well as other distinguished guests. And I wanted to start, of course, thanking, Dr. Duryasamy for setting the context very well. So let me straight away go to my presentation. Next slide, please. So the stark reality is that, BBIN within South Asia is unfortunately the least regionally integrated region. And you see the graph on the left-hand side, you can hardly see those blue bars compared to, the light green, which is the intra-BBN, the regional trade, which is only about 2% of what the BBIN countries, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal does with the rest of the world. Similarly, if you see on the right side, the average trade costs, it seems puzzling, but the ad valorem cost between India and Germany is trade cost is actually lower than the ad valorem cost between Bangladesh and India. And there are many reasons for this, as we know, including Dr. Duryasamy mentioned about essentially the culture of trading, or even the institutional setup, the whole issue of customs, the tariffs and non-tariff barriers. But there is also a critical challenge of connected infrastructure and coordinated management of that infrastructure. Next slide, please. You would realize, though, that Waterways historically plays that role because of that seamless connectivity, across transcending the geographical or the political borders between India and Bangladesh. As far as we understand, historically in 1940s, 40% of the trade in this region used to happen through waterways, through Ganga, Brahmaputra, Padma, Meghna river system. And we do indeed have an opportunity to revive this. There are a lot of positive signs, including the recent enthusiasm from the different governments, both in India and Bangladesh, and even Nepal and Bhutan. Those are landlocked or land-linked countries, whatever you want to mention, define them, but they can also benefit from these waterway improvement. And this concept of Eastern Grid Waterways actually came from the simultaneous development, what is happening in India and Bangladesh. This is a 3,500 kilometer of interconnected waterway, supplemented through, of course, coastal shipping or short sea shipping, as well as land-based routes, mostly roads. The backbone of this system is, again, the Ganga Brahmaputra system, seamlessly connected through the Indo-Bangladesh protocol route. And then, as you see in subsequent slides, connected to Nepal and Bhutan through land routes. So the different river ports then connected to those countries through land routes. And as you also see in this map, a dotted line, a coastal shipping between Kolkata and Chittagong, between India and Bangladesh, as well as a short shipping route between both India and Myanmar and Bangladesh and Myanmar. So the whole concept of this is essentially establishing a regional framework, institution, and shared management of this inland waterways. Next one, please. Zooming a little bit into each of the countries. So if you look between India and Bangladesh, I think the levers are long-standing dialogue. Dr. Duryasamy mentioned about, the 1970s. In fact, it started with water sharing treaty and then again got revived. There's bilateral trade treaties and the protocol routes. Now it, of course, is in kind of an auto-renewal mode every 5 years. Interestingly, as I mentioned, even the conservative estimate is that in the last 5 years, both countries together have spent about $3 billion on augmentation of the waterway system, and out of which I'm proud to inform you that the bank has supported about 40% of it, or about $1.2 billion. I'm not going into the details of the route that has already been mentioned. And also Dr. Duryasamy mentioned about the second amendment to the Bangladesh Protocol route, opening up some new routes in the northwestern Bangladesh, as well as in the northeastern and southeastern Bangladesh. So let's move on to the next bit. Next slide, please. Similarly, Nepal, I think, is really watching this very closely, this development, and they want to take advantage of the improvement in the waterway system in the sub-region, particularly in India on National Waterway 1. And as you can see in the map, today it is possible to have these land routes, the different connection between the three different border posts, including Birganj, which is the busiest one in Nepal, with Kalughat, a new terminal which is being developed, a container terminal which is being developed opposite Patna, and similarly a connectivity with Sahibganj and Viratnagar, as well as Varanasi with Natunua. As already has been presented, Sahibganj and Varanasi today are terminals, multimodal terminals, which are already operational. At the same time, what we see at a higher policy level, the new bilateral trade and transit treaty for the first time actually includes waterways. This is the bilateral treaty between Nepal and India. And there is establishment of a shipping office and register, and there is a constant dialogue. In fact, there has been a recent study also to see how Nepal could take advantage of this development on NW1, and particularly these new multimodal terminals which are coming up. Next one, please. Zooming into Bhutan, again, my fellow speakers had already mentioned earlier that there are two very positive issues, which has developments which have recently happened. An MOU of Bhutan with Bangladesh for using a waterway for accessing actually the sea route or Chittagong port, and of course using the Indian land bit, which is from Phoensoling to Dhubri, and then down using the Jamuna River further to Chittagong. And then the new development both in India on Jogigopa, multimodal terminal on National Waterway 2, as well as Jilafu, which is in Bhutan, a new airport and a dry port and a whole new logistic cluster coming up there. So there are actually two routes opening up there, and I would say plenty of new opportunities for Bhutan also to essentially use this waterway system, both NW2 and also the improvement what is happening currently in Jamuna and further south in Bangladesh. Next slide, please. However, there are many integration challenges, and Dr. Duryasamy actually hinted on this. So quickly, if we can put those in three buckets. One is related to all of the trade protocol. A lot of these are being addressed very encouragingly. First of all, adding waterways to trade and transit agreement, as is being done between Nepal and India. Designating protocol routes and ports of call. And new ports of call are being added, again, between India and Bangladesh. There is also a new protocol route between Nepal and India, which is being developed, which is multimodal in nature, but has a significant part of waterways in it. Duration of bilateral protocol, now it is in an auto-renewal mood. Earlier, say, between India and Bangladesh, it was getting renewed every year. We see now it will be renewed every 5 years. This will actually give lot of confidence to the industry of this kind of intergovernmental agreement, which are slightly longer duration. Although there are several tariff and non-tariff barriers, customs and insurance, etc., remain. And currently, we are doing quite a few studies to highlight this to all the participating countries, the member countries, and how this could be further improved. And similarly, there is a challenge of multimodal integration, but we see that this is being addressed in all of these countries, including in Nepal and Bhutan, which is very. Harmonization challenge was also mentioned. So how can you do an uniform navigation standard in terms of the draft availability and air height? Can we have at least a 2.5 meter the draft from Varanasi to at least Sadia, or if not Sadia, at least to Jogigopha, so that we have an uniform draft there, the berth size, the vessels, the handling facility. Similarly, a uniform operating condition like river information system, we only see it in India, and Bangladesh is yet to catch up. Should we have a uniform disaster management framework? Very important for waterways. Night navigation is critically important. Some of our pilot movements have shown that about 40% of the journey time could be actually reduced if you would have night navigation. Crew standards are very different across countries. So there are several areas. In the third area where there is a lot of potential is the coastal inland waterway integration. China in the last decade has done a lot in this, and I think in this region we can take definite benefit of it. I already mentioned about Kolkata Chittagong or India Bangladesh coastal shipping agreement, which has been constantly amended to improve it further. The short sea shipping between Bangladesh and Myanmar and India and Myanmar is also an interesting one. However, there has to be a river sea vessel standard. There has to be dedicated berths and preferred treatment to coastal cargo, and application of environmental standards is an issue, because say MARPOL standards which are applied to coastal waters, should it be also applied to integration to inland waterways? So here are a few integration challenges. A lot of things are happening on this. Of course, more studies are required, and more, I think, corridor specific studies are required rather than doing it, looking at more holistically. Next one, please. Let us look at some of these regional authorities or intergovernmental partnerships which already exist in the world. And these are mostly, of course, River Basin Organizations, as we know. I have just cited two. On the right-hand side is the CCNR, many of you know. It's the oldest and I think the most active River Basin Organization or an intergovernmental partnership, which is Central Commission for Navigation of River Rhine. That is key focus has now actually moved to navigation. As you know, there are 5 member states in this. And in the other side of spectrum is the Nile Basin Initiative, which is again an initiative of a River Basin Organization for 10 countries. However, it has largely remained to water sharing, integrated water resource management, and irrigation. And perhaps it has not been able to utilize the potential of navigation to that extent. And there are many organizations in between. Recently formed the Mekong River one, the Danube, which has been already existing for a long time, Congo, the Great Lakes in US. So there are several actually templates, which of course this region can follow. Next one, please. So if we have a quick scan of kind of global lessons from these river basin organizations, those have been largely established by the riparian states, in this case, India and Bangladesh, and of course, then Nepal and Bhutan. They may not be riparian, but they will get benefit out of it. And there are 4 areas which are important to focus here. One is the scope of activities. And again, we see a very broad spectrum here. There are multiple options of, functional scope, either regulatory, observatory, or advisory body, only focusing on navigation to a larger integrated water resource management approach. And in that, the navigation is embedded. Looking into the mission and structure also, there is again a very wide spectrum here in how the member states, whether the regulation is still independently managed by those member states or it is bestowed to this organization legally to deliver that function. And that has linkage, of course, with the institutional and legal structure. You would realize that these are actually influenced by the cultural, historical, and political forces. The cultural, historical forces here are very strong, but there has been many political reasons. First and Second World War has been a major driver for, we talked about the Central River Commission the CCNR, the Rhine River Commission, where the integration of Western Europe was a major factor. But as the countries here are now coming closer in terms of improved bilateral or multilateral relationship, can we utilize that as well? Lastly, I think the funding source is very important, and we have seen that again through a quick scan of many organizations that the primary funding support has come from the member states, may not be in equal proportion, sometimes depending on whether those are riparian states or landlocked or landlinked states which are taking advantage of this. Also some secondary donor organization and countries, and definitely organizations like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, AIIB, etc., who has now quite a bit of let me talk about the AIIB, which is a new organization, but by 2030 they have a target of 30% of their investments going into regional projects. So can we also tap those funding sources? Let's move on to the next one. So this is a highly schematic diagram of what is the path ahead in terms of creating first this institutional integrated management, which I think is a critical factor. And as you see that there are kind of three distinct stages here, starting with a memorandum of understanding, which is a memorandum of understanding among the member states, largely focused still on the existing protocol routes and implementation by a standing committee kind of structure. India can actually take advantage of this because of this new EVAC-TG office which has been set up. I think if the MOU can be now established with different countries, this could be the beginning. Then moving to an intermediate consolidation stage, where largely this harmonization of standards are taken care of, the standing committee then kind of also starts taking an arm's length relationship with a center of excellence, a regional center of excellence, or I would say a network center of excellence, which would be the consultative body where research and development can take place, where information sharing digital platforms can be best. And regulatory power, of course, still remains with the riparian countries, but then there is a common framework or a standard operating procedure, which Dr. Durayasamy was mentioning. And finally, moving to a regional convention. So this is more legal, where the regulatory power is then, the riparian countries can jointly agree to bestow that regulatory power to this the regional organization. And this will have a structured layer. It will have an independent legal status. It will be the custodian of that harmonized customs procedures and kind of civil liability. Also an independent permanent secretariat, which is represented by all member countries. And this is the structure actually which the Rhine River Commission currently is in. And it has been a long journey for them as well. So we are saying, can we do it in next 10 to 15 years? Slowly moving from memorandum of understanding to an intermediate consolidation and an administrative arrangement, and then finally moving to a regional convention side. I think this is the heart of it, of actually creating this integrated institutional management and integrated operational strategy. Next slide, please. What benefit we could accrue out of this? I mean, it is immense, I would say. I mentioned in 1940s, 40% of these regional trade, or the trade, that time, of course, it was not regional, pre-independence, but the trade in this region were happening through waterways. Can we bring back even 20% of that? And one of our bank report, the glass half full, says we have an unrealized trade potential of US $49 billion. This is a few years ago. I think this potential has further grown. So it can serve 20% of that. Significant reduction in logistic cost. I don't need to mention it again. Previous speakers have mentioned it. SAR as a region, South Asia region, is doing again very bad, very poorly, unfortunately, in terms of the logistic cost. Not only India, but even Bangladesh and Nepal and Bhutan, they actually fall below India in terms of even the logistic performance. Economic rejuvenation of Northeast India. This is not to be forgotten. 600 million beneficiary and poor people actually largely, they live in this river basin areas, and they can actually tremendously benefit from this. The wider economic benefit which we can achieve through supplementary programs like Ardh Ganga, Ardh Brahmaputra, and also in Bangladesh, the Green Economic Zone project in Jamuna can be immense. Promoting greener mode of transport, several factors were already quoted. But let me tell, and globally also it has a huge perspective. This project was particularly mentioned in India's INDC COP21 and for the upcoming Glasgow COP26. We are pretty sure that IWT as a mode is going to be discussed very much. So can we actually contribute to this through this regional network? All of the countries, can they contribute? And last but not least, the scale factor benefit, which can lead to leveraging private investment in freight, in tourism. You heard all of that, so I don't need to again reiterate it. And boost the user confidence, boost the trade confidence in both of the countries. So, you know, the sky is the limit here, if I may say. So the potential is huge. And let me end by again thanking the organizers, thanking everyone for patient hearing. And if there are any questions, happy to answer. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Arnab, for presenting the picture that is taking beyond bilateral connectivity to multilateral connectivity and the vast outreach that this project, this concept can have, affecting about almost 500 million people. You have very well brought out the integration challenges. It won't be easy to tread this path. Vikram, just to come back to you, and you know, we have a very stylish way of saying EWACTG. It's called EVAC-TG. We call it EVAC-TG. So that's the best we could do. So perhaps we can still explore for a better, you know, presentation of EVAC-TG. But if you like it, we can go ahead with this for the time being. We do have another speaker, the last speaker of the day, that is Mr. Sergey Lazarev. He's head of export department from SSR Fleet, Russia. Sir, you have just about 5 minutes. We have really over exceeded our time. Sorry about that, but we have a Q&A session. We have 4 questions after this, and we have to finish in another 10 minutes completely, because then we'll go offline and our session will end. So 5 minutes to Mr. Sergey Lazarev, and then next 5 minutes will be Q&A to 4 speakers. I request all the speakers to remain connected, please. Thank you. Or can we have the question to Vikram before you leave? I think Mr. Vikram Doraiswamy has to leave. If Vikram, you are there, can I read out the question?
Sure.
Yeah, this question is for His Excellency Mr. Vikram Doraiswamy. Greetings to everyone from Bangladesh. Somebody from Bangladesh has asked this question. Christy Ong Leona from the Report online multimedia news portal in Dhaka. Where does Bangladesh stand in India's Maritime Vision 2030? Please share the project plans that India has with Bangladesh, which are included in the Indian Maritime Vision 2030. That's the question.
Well, I mean, the Maritime Vision 2030 is largely driven out of the Ministry of Shipping. But the broader point here is that we are interested in participating in the development of maritime infrastructure in Bangladesh, including the upgradation of port infrastructure at Chittagong, the Bay Container Terminal project that's underway, the upgrade of the Patenga Container Terminal, as well as in Khulna, which is the other major port in existence in Bangladesh, where we already have funds set aside for both of these projects, the Bay Container Terminal and the Khulna port upgrade, to help facilitate an upgrade of capacity in both of these important ports. We're also offering funding through our line of credit for connectivity between Khulna port and Mongla town. Sorry, I keep calling it Khulna and Mongla, the other way around, Mongla and Khulna, so that Mongla can be connected up with the major consumption center in Khulna and beyond as a railhead towards Dhaka. Similarly, in Chattogram, our intention is to try and facilitate greater connectivity to Chattogram, both by road, but also by inland waterway connectivity, so that we can utilize to the maximum extent facilities that Bangladesh has already developed and can develop with the support of partners such as ourselves to recapture the connectivity of Bangladesh as one of the primary nodes of transportation connectivity in the entire sub-region. So those are the 2 or 3 key sets of initiatives that we're looking at. Beyond that, we're also keen to expand road and railway connectivity, which will help in a multimodal sense to link up with inland waterways and with ports in Bangladesh. Thank you.
Mr. Sergei Lazarev, can you start your presentation?
Yes, I agree. I'm ready. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me firstly introduce my company. I am representing Russian shipbuilding company OC Shipbuilding Ship Repair Fleet. Our company is rapidly developing Russian industrial manufacturing unit what specialized over decision and production of hovercraft and multi-purpose vessels. The production unit is located in the city of Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, and annually we are manufacturing over 100 vessels. Next, please. What are advantages of hovercrafts over traditional types of water transport, and how can it be used in Indian market? Next, please. Next, please. The main advantage is the amphibious properties of the vessel, which allow a hovercraft to transport goods or passengers on any surface, low draft or sand, and does not require coastal infrastructure. These advantages are highly perceived when we speak about Indian transport industry, what face such main challenge as overpopulation, high traffic density cause traffic jams on the road. Second, low road density and poor quality. So there is a great need for alternative modes of transport. Under such condition, hovercrafts being great alternative to modes of transport can help Indian industry to use effectively the potential of 16,000 kilometers of inland waterways. Next, please. The vessels what supply are used to provide remote settlement, passenger and cargo transportation for tourism, cruise, protection of water bodies, as well as official transport of law enforcement agencies. Let me briefly introduce what kind of vessel can be of high demand in India. Next, please. There are 3 types of hovercrafts of different passenger capacity. Next, please. For 10 passenger, 20 passenger, and 25 passengers. Next, please. Next, please. 25. Okay. I hope what the organization will share in detail my presentation, so what dear listeners could get equipment in detail with our offer. Next, please. Our company also developed the project of a high-speed passenger ship Phoenix on aluminum kegs for 70 passengers. A low draft allow you to move freely through rocky, shallow waters and land on the shore without any amenities. Next, please. Our company is the creator of multi-purpose vessel projects, such as the Series project. Vessels under this project perform work on the elimination of emergency oil spills, as well as patrolling and performing our operational tasks. And also, next please, we produce a garbage collector vessel named Vodamerka. Vodamerka serving for garbage collection in the port areas. Summarizing, I would like to note what we mentioned above project can bring a new life to the development of water transport in India, and I would be glad to work out in detail a way of joint cooperation with Indian companies and government agencies. Next, please. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Lazarev, for a very interesting presentation on the possibilities of the types of vessels that can ply on the inland waterways in India, and we have been looking forward to solutions to really boost up the urban water transport system in India. So thank you very much for giving us a glimpse of the vessels that you have. We have another 5 to 7 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. We have 4 questions. The first question is to Captain Anil Kishore Singh. I will read out the question. It is from Mr. Rajneesh from Kozhikode. Has the Adani Group taken up the Vizhinjam port, which is naturally deep enough for motherships? What are the plans there? And also, as the industrial corridor doesn't go through this area, which it should have as, he would like to know whether Vizhinjam has the potential to replace Colombo in the maritime map. So what are your views on this, Captain Anil?
So Adani have already started working on the Vizhinjam port. In fact, we have been working there for quite a while. So yes, we have taken over. The breakwater is on, the jetty work is going on, connectivity is being established. It was always meant to be a it may not displace Colombo completely, but in fact, we expect that there will be enough incremental volume for all these ports coming up. Recently, Tuticorin has also been announced as another transshipment hub. And there is a West Coast container terminal at Colombo itself that has been given to the Indian government to develop, where Adani would be very keen to operate. In fact, it has been announced yesterday. So all this is to take care of all the transshipment that is happening out of India. Colombo will continue to get some volume, but the incremental volume it's expected should go through the Indian port.
Okay, thank you, Captain Singh. I hope the answer satisfies the question. The next question is to Mr. Arnav Bandyopadhyay from the World Bank. The question is, what would be this? This is from Bangladesh. This question is from Bangladesh. What would be the role of World Bank in the EVAC TG project? Would there be any financial assistance given to the government of Bangladesh and to the government of India and other neighboring countries, or would it only be technical assistance?
Thanks very much. So currently what we are doing is... Should I go ahead, sir?
Yes, please. Sorry. Yes, please.
Yeah. No. So currently what we are doing is, of course, we are providing a technical assistance at this point to do 5 studies, which would eventually be helpful for developing this whole partnership model, which we are talking about, the institutional and also waterborne trade related issues. In that, what we are also trying to do is trying to identify a couple of projects where, interestingly, most of the investments will be on the Bangladesh side, and that we'll have to see that how this then further, kind of materialize in terms of investments, etc. it has to be a joint discussion, of course, with all of the 4 countries. I just also wanted to mention that we are preparing a project which is a multimodal transport regional project. In fact, I see the task leader for that. He was connected, but he's Mr. Eric Nora, which will have opportunity to take up these projects in a phased manner over the next 10 years. The contour, the detailed contour of that is not known, but waterway investments are very much part of it. This is over and above what we are currently doing in Bangladesh. As you know, we have 3 interventions in Bangladesh, 2 projects and 1 being prepared on the Jamuna Economic Corridor as well, Chittagong, Dhaka. So yes, the investments bank will continue to do. In India, as you know, also we have kind of 2 waterway projects and maybe a 3rd one you can say in West Bengal, which is largely focused on Kolkata city. So yes, we would continue to support both in terms of investment, may not be as a part of a large one project, but parts of the grid and the technical assistance, of course, we will continue to provide. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Arnab. The next question is to Dr. Pratap Talwar, MIT TDG. The question is, what are the challenges that you foresee regarding rapid growth of urban water transport in India, why it could not really take off, and why it has been delayed?
Well, I've specifically focused on 6 successes where things are moving to study what institutional barriers there may be that these successful projects have crossed over or bypassed. I think the between just those 6 projects, at stabilization, ridership is projected to be over 8 million per month. This is at a level that is higher or equal to the most intensely used urban public transport elsewhere in the world. So the potential is great. I think the issues of integrating land and infrastructure policies with the provision and planning of urban transport, in other words, settlement and land policy and urban transport infrastructure and operations, is, I think, the core challenge of these projects. I think that the potential is great. There is a large geography of underserved population near waterways in most of the cities that we have looked at. And I think making the 2 connections together and harmonizing those land policies with transport infrastructure is probably the big challenge of the next few years.
The question is a kind of a technical question that the least depths, low depths have been experienced in the European waterways as well as the Chinese waterways, and what are the strategies adopted by them to overcome the issue of low drafts during lean seasons, and how it can be, those practices could be adopted in India as well. That's the question.
Sorry, that's a question for me, Javier?
Or that's the question for you, Harry. That's the question for you.
Okay, sorry, I missed the beginning. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there are many solutions. Of course, it starts with providing water in the river. And when we look at new concepts like working with nature or room for the river, there are options to keep your water for a longer period in the waterway. That's one. Second is that you can do a lot on the vessel designs, and especially, well, notably the Inlet Waterway Authority has took a remarkable initiative to develop shallow draft vessels, and there are much more possibilities you could say, on the Indian waterways than on the European waterways, because you have much more width on the waterways, and you could make your vessels wider and more shallow draft. There are all kind of technical solutions, other materials that you can use. It's a big issue. Well, not so much in China, because there they did major works on the waterways, which we try to prevent a little bit in the other waterways where we are working. But on the European waterways, there's a lot of technical innovation going on. I think that is where you have to find the solutions. Thank you. Back to you, Javier.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you very much. This is the penultimate question, and the question is addressed to convener Mr. Rajiv Jalota, Chairman, Mumbai Port. So the question is, are the cruise lines going to start again on the Mumbai port because they had stopped because of the pandemic? What are the plans for that?
Actually, Praveen, we have received quite a bit of interest in the recent past from the cruise lines. And in fact, one of the cruise lines, Cordelia Cruise Lines, want to make Mumbai as its home port for the new season, and they plan to start from May. The only impediment right now is the protocol on the COVID front, that what international or national protocol will come for the passengers and the crew for the cruises. I believe in the next 1 month or so, some protocol may be adopted, because there are also our Indian cruise Angria, which was moving from Mumbai to Goa, has also evinced interest to start from the next cruising season, like first week of October onwards. But they want the protocol to be set in place. I believe there is a renewed interest right now, and these cruises will get a lifeline once the SOPs are in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, very much. And the last question is to Chairperson IWI, ma'am, who is sitting right next to me. The question is, what is the roadmap of IWI for the next 2-3 years, and where does IWI see it itself?
Thank you, Praveer. Though he was sitting next to me, he never revealed the question he's going to ask me. I think next 2-3 years are very crucial. For one thing, that there has lot of interest has been shown in this sector, especially by Honorable Prime Minister also has been mentioning waterways as one of the key factors for India infrastructure growth, along with railways, highways, and e-ways. So I think with the infrastructure in place, which we are doing it in both Ganga, Brahmaputra, and National Waterways 3, which is Kochi area, Goa also. And as was told earlier by Honorable Minister, 23 waterways have been planned to be developed. Out of that, 16 we are already developing, 17 rather. And we also invite private sector to come and show interest. One very good example is of National Waterways 10 Amba River, which is used by a private developer, and they use it very well for their industrial and other things. So I think with the I think that next 3 years are going to be very crucial, because our Jal Marg Vikas project is going to happen to complete, and 3 multimodals will be in place. People are showing a lot of interest in this. Market development is also happening. We are talking to a number of people. The only problem which I see is of the vessel availability. So if the vessel availability is taken care of by the private sector, and also the marketing part of it, I think we are on the right path, and I see a lot of growth, especially with Eastern Water Gate and all other waterways coming on way. I must like to mention here that we also work a lot with the state maritime boards, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Kerala, and some of the other, now Karnataka has also joined, and IWT departments of West Bengal, Assam. They are really on board for this, and for tourism and recreational purpose, a lot of them are coming. So I see that a lot of potential will happen, and they will unleash. Private sector has to really chip in their might into investment, and also marketing and vessel. I think there the opportunity lies. So I hope things will move towards a positive direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And that brings the session to a close. We have exceeded by 70 minutes, not much, only 70 minutes. So this has been a very wonderful session. I thank on behalf of the Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways and my colleague, convener, Mr. Rajiv Jalota Saab, Chairman, Mumbai Port, and all the other organizers. Thank very profusely all the esteemed speakers who gave their time, who prepared for this meet, and they submitted their presentations much in advance. And we could also have fruitful discussions before we reach this day today. I also thank FICCI for organizing this session flawlessly, and it was really wonderful to interact with all of you. The outcomes of the efforts which are being made jointly by the Government of India and the private sector, some outcomes have come. We can assess them. We can see whether what we did right, what we have done not right, what could be the course corrections, and we have also seen what are the strategies and the road ahead, as Chairperson ma'am just pointed out, what could be the road ahead, and the future looks bright and things could be achievable. We just need to continue our efforts in coordinated efforts together to take this forward to achieve greater heights in this sector. Thank you very much again for joining us in this session.
Thank you very much.